In this video demonstration, we're going to show you something that is a pretty common problem that we need to address and when you're working with a multi-decoration design. So here we have our Branson USA design for our design of the day, and what we need to do is we need to remove a portion of our heat transfer vinyl material, which is this pink circle. It could be glitter or any other type of heat transfer vinyl material, but we need to remove a portion of it where the strings are on top of our heat transfer vinyl. And it's a pretty easy task to do, but sometimes in CorelDRAW, and this is a good example, sometimes in CorelDRAW it does weird things that frustrate us, and we don't know why it happens, but it is important for us to know how to fix the issue. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to come in here with our freehand pick tool. We're going to hold down our Alt key, and we're going to swipe through the stones and pick up the stones that are overlapping our HTV. So now we have all of our stones selected that are on top of our HTV, or you can see we should have, and we even have the stones, the HTV itself selected. So we're going to hold our Shift key and get rid of that. So now you can see if we were to move the stones, we're just removing the stones from the HTV. So now we're going to group those together by clicking on this button right here. It says group. And now those stones are grouped together, as you can see. And so then the next step, of course, is to apply some type of contour. And in this case, we're going to type in 0.5 millimeter to the outside. Now, when we do that, this is where part of the frustration comes in. You can see that only some of the circles have a contour applied to them. And obviously, that is not what we need. So we're going to undo that and figure out the next step. And that only happens sometimes. I don't know why it happens. It's just weird that it does happen that way. So what we can do is we can go at it a different way. We'll go back to our freehand pick tool, and this time we're just going to swipe through one row. So now we just swipe through one row of stones and see if that would yield us any type of different result. So now you can see if I pull these away, you can see only that one row. We're going to group that together. So you can see here that's already grouped together. And then we're going to apply the contour. And this time we'll do 3/4 of a millimeter. And now you can see that, in fact, we did get a proper contour when we did just the one row. So I don't understand the mystery behind that. I just know that's what it does. And so we know how to address that should that become a problem. So let's go ahead and break that contour group apart. And then what we're going to do is take the contour and our stone and go from center to center. Just hit the space bar and hit the space bar. Okay, so now we've taken care of all of that. Now, we did create some duplicates that we don't need, so we'll get rid of those. And all of our contours, there's 4 of them in this case, let's go ahead and put all those back together again. Kind of like Humpty Dumpty. So we'll put all those back together again, and we're going to weld those together. Now, here's where the issue comes into play. When you're cutting this out, what we're basically doing is creating an outline that we can trim our HTV with. And you can see all these inside little diamond shapes. We don't want those. So how do we get rid of those? Well, in CorelDRAW, what you would do is select your shape, right-click, and break it apart. Hold your Shift key down and click on the outside shape. So go ahead and do that. So now the only thing that is selected are those little diamond bits. Okay, now you can see all those little diamond bits are separate. We can go ahead and delete. So now the little diamond bits are gone. So now we can take our shape and our HTV and trim away. Delete our shape. And there you go. Now you can see we have our HTV trimmed away. We do have these little tiny pieces that we'll go ahead and just double click on. It takes us into our shape tool that we can then delete. And there is the finished product. See? So now we have our banjo. So now we can go ahead and cut this out, and our stones won't be sitting directly on top of our HTV. Now I'm going to undo this a bit because we do have a similar function in EasyStone. So if you're an EasyStone user, the process is a bit more simplified, although some of the same issues that we had in CorelDRAW we're also going to have when we're working with EasyStone, but we'll show you kind of how we tackle some of these things just a little bit differently in EasyStone. So in EasyStone, what you would do is there's a function called Create Decal Cut Line here on the Specialty tab, and if we hold Shift Create Decal Cut Line, we can define the amount of offset, which in this case we'll use 3/4 of a millimeter, so we type in 0.75. All right, now instead of using the freehand pick tool, there's actually a function here inside EasyStone where we can select the first stone and the last stone of the selection and hit S, and it will automatically select everything in between. So then we'll go ahead and apply our decal cut line. So we just click on that, and it will go ahead and apply the decal cut line. You can see that decal cut line has been applied. And then just like before, we're going to do the same thing we did previously where we just copy, 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 right? Just like so. And then what we're going to do, of course, is go ahead and select our pieces. We're going to go ahead and weld them together. So up to this point, we did a very similar process that we did in CorelDRAW. The only slight difference is rather than breaking apart and unselecting, we can just right-click on Create Decal Cut Line, and that will remove all of our interior pieces for us. And then, of course, we can select our decal cut line and our shape and trim away. Okay? And then we would go back through and delete our decal cut line. Just like before, we would go ahead and select, double-click, and delete those little bits there. Same basic process. So there you go. So that is how to remove those little interior parts when you have stones on top of HTV, how to do that that way. Now, I should point out, too, that there is actually another feature that I just want to show you real quick and give you some insight on. That can be helpful. So let's just say we had a situation like this. We have stones sitting right on top. There's actually another feature that I want to point out to you. And that feature, we'll go back over here to our editing tab. And it's a little feature that we just threw in there. If you can remember to use it, it is available to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark the object that we want to apply the trim to, which in this case is our black HTV. And then we're going to select our stones. So we'll go ahead and select our stones, and then we're going to go ahead and define an amount, which in this case, I'm going to define an amount of 1. If I hold down my Alt key and click on Trim Objects, let's see what happens here. You can see what happens here. The stones, actually nothing happens. You can see nothing happens to our HTV. So we're going to go ahead and mark that again, and this time I'm going to use the Control key. So we'll still use 1. But this time we'll hit the Control key in Trim Objects, and now you'll see something a little bit different. And this is what I wanted to point out to you, because all these functions have some specialized functionality, and if you know how to use them, they can be quite useful. So what we did is we applied 1. And what it does is, you see here, it trimmed away, our stone is left, but it actually trimmed away part of our HTV. This distance is actually a 0.5 millimeter because we defined 1. Okay, so you can see we defined a positive 1. So now you can see there's no hole in our HTV. We're going to mark it. That's the object to be trimmed. And we're going to select these objects here. And this time we're going to do 2, or let's do 1 again, I guess. But this time what we're going to do, let's do -1, and we will also hold down our Control key and click on Trim Objects. And now you can see that if I double click on my black, see how that now has a hole to the inside of our stone. So sometimes it just depends on how you want to cut your HTV. Do you want your HTV ever so slightly smaller like that? So that the stones totally cover the edge of your HTV, but part of it is touching the garment? Or do you want it the other way where the HTV is larger, the hole in the HTV is a little bit larger than your stone? It's really just a matter of personal preference there. But I did want to show you that you do have those additional options when you use your control key with trim objects. That is an additional option for you. Okay, so that pretty well covers every option that would be available to you when you're wanting to remove the HTV that is sitting below your stones that are sitting on top.